My husband cheated on me and still paid for my nursing school after leaving me with our toddler, but now years later his mistress is demanding I pay them back like I owe her something. So for some background, my ex-husband and I ended things over 20 years ago. When our son was 2 he stepped out. At the time I was a stay-at-home mom and going to nursing school full-time. He was paying for my schooling. After he left I asked him if he would keep paying for my school so I could finish with no debt. He agreed, saying it was the least he could do. Then a few months after that he got his affair partner pregnant. Once she got pregnant she demanded he stop paying for my schooling. It was 1/5 of their income and she said that money needed to go towards their new baby. He refused and kept paying for the remaining year and a half I had left. Over the years I continued my education and now I'm a nurse practitioner. I do well for myself and I never remarried. But now onto the problem. My son called me and told me he and his wife are expecting. I was ecstatic. I asked if I could come over sometime during the weekend by and give them some things, his favorite stuffy as a child, a check, and some other small sentimental things. He said yes, so I went over earlier today. I came by and gave him everything, including a check for a few $1,000s. For baby stuff, co-pays, the nursery, or anything else they may want. My son and his wife thanked me and told me the money would be very helpful. My ex-husband and his wife came over and a little while later, they surprised them with dinner and didn't know I'd be there, and saw the check on the counter. My ex's wife asked about it and I said, oh well, I wanted to help out where I could, everything's so expensive nowadays. I was really just trying to be polite, but I don't think this is any of her business. This woman had the audacity to say, well, maybe since you have all this money now you can finally pay us back all that money you took when you went to college. I was dumbfounded. My ex has literally never brought up me paying him back. He's always said it was the least he could do for both me and our son. My ex has done very well for himself in his career. I didn't see how or why they'd need the money, so I asked them, do you guys need the money or something? And my ex said no, and she said of course not, it's about principle. I told her I will absolutely not be paying them back for college tuition from over 20 years ago, especially when she ended up in our marital home while I was living in a small apartment barely making ends meet for years after I initially finished school. I've never been bitter or mean, I've always been civil since our kids are siblings, but my blood was boiling. I left shortly after that. According to my son, this has been a point of contention in their marriage. She's brought it up a few times over the years in front of him. And she's insisting to him that he needs to convince me to finally pay back what they're owed. The biggest issue is now that the whole damn family is involved. I got calls from 3 separate family members saying I need to get over myself and just pay it back. So am I in the wrong here? Relevant comments. Commenter 1, he created a mess. Did he pay alimony? Did he take it off his taxes? OP, we didn't have any court-ordered alimony or child support while I was in school. He just paid for the school since it was so expensive. I'm not sure if he took it off his taxes, he just gave me the money every month. Once the divorce was finalized shortly after I finished school, we made arrangements for child support but no alimony. Commenter number 2, tell her it was the adultery tax or that her husband was ensuring that his son would have a good life with either parent. OP, this is exactly what my ex said. He wanted to make sure we could both afford things for our son. It was in a way a good investment for him because we went half on basically every activity he was in, his first car and his college tuition. We definitely couldn't have done that if I only had a high school education. Update, 2 days later. So first I want to clarify some things. Yes, it was our marital home, we bought it after getting married. I didn't fight so hard for it in the divorce for a few reasons, mostly that she was borderline harassing me about how they needed the house for their growing family. I also didn't want to deal with a longer and more drawn-out divorce, and it would have been if I fought for the house. Yes, he bought me out of the house, however it really wasn't much as it was late 2007. Most of it went towards credit card debt anyway. Another thing, when he was paying for my schooling we were still legally married. The divorce didn't finalize until after I graduated. There was no child support until after I graduated. There was never any alimony. I did live in the house while I was in school and they lived in an apartment. He paid all those bills including hers after she got pregnant. So his finances were tight at the time. The family that called weren't my relatives. They were my ex's and his wife's relatives. I thought they were family, but they've since been blocked. On to the update. I got off work yesterday to find a few missed calls from my son. When I called him back he tells me that his stepmom has now asked for the money from the check since it was almost the same amount they spent on my college. She said it was obvious I'd never pay my debts, and that I would just give him, my son, more money anyways. I'm stunned. I'm pissed. I don't know what has possessed her to think to ask my son for money intended for his family. I tell my son to ignore her, and I'll handle it. So next I call my ex, but it goes straight to voicemail. I try again a few minutes later and it's the same thing. So I reluctantly call my ex's wife and she answers immediately. I tell her the 3 of us, my ex, her, and me, need to meet first thing in the morning to discuss the debt. I'm thinking this needs to happen in person with all 3 of us so there's no confusion. She agrees. This morning we met at a coffee shop near my ex's work. As soon as they sit down I say, so, ex's wife, want to tell me why you think it's appropriate to ask my son for money? My ex looks at her and says, you asked, our son, for money? She starts on about how she was only asking for the money they're owed and she didn't ask for more than was on the check. Then she says for years we struggled due to paying for your school. For years we couldn't afford a new car, a new house, or a nanny. My kids had to share a room. She goes on about her struggles. I started to tune her out because I keep thinking there's no way she's this deluded. It may have been inappropriate, but I laughed. I literally took out thousands in credit card debt to keep me and my son afloat while my at the time husband was shacking up with her and paying her bills. My ex looks at her and says, "What the hell, Sarah?" I added, "It's laughable you think you're owed anything from while you were a mistress. We were married when he paid for my schooling. It's quite literally none of your business how he chose to spend money. You had zero entitlement to his money until you said I do, and from what I recall that wasn't until years after the divorce was even finalized. Do not contact me or my son about this money again. You will never see a dime from me." She rolls her eyes and gets up to leave. My ex tells her he's going to stay for a minute. After she's gone, he asks why I didn't just call him and tell him about what was going on, said he would have handled it and that it didn't have to go this far. I say I did call him, twice actually, and this is how we figured out she blocked my number from his phone. So those of you who said she's just very insecure, you were absolutely correct. I tell him that she involved his sister, cousin, and his sister-in-law. That I got several calls and texts from them telling me I should just pay back my debt finally. I tell him that she involves the family and then asked our son for money intended for his baby. She's crossed too many lines. He apologizes and says he'll make sure she doesn't bother me about it again. We both leave after that. My son told me he blocked her number and doesn't want her at his house until she apologizes. That's pretty much it for now. Relevant comments. Commenter number 1. She is a very insecure person. She is jealous of you. She took your man. He is trash, she can have him, but you are thriving, and she is jealous because you did what you had to do and are thriving. Her being his mistress didn't destroy you, so she is just holding on to this money thing. Good for you. Remember to always be petty. It's good for the soul. Glad you had the chat, and I hope this annoyance is over for you, and congrats on becoming a grandma. OP. Always be petty. It's good for the soul. Commenter number 2. I hope ex and mistress get divorced. They don't deserve a happily ever after, and more importantly your son doesn't deserve to have that psycho around him. OP. Yeah, honestly the person I feel the worst for here is my son. He grew up with a woman who hated his mom for no good reason and apparently always held a grudge over me getting an education. I can't imagine after what she did recently he'd want her super involved as a grandma. I don't think that'll go down well. Downloaded commenter. Yes, you're the jerk. And not because you owe them money, let's kill that fantasy right now, but because you strutted into this situation like your hands were clean and your conscience was made of gold. Spoiler alert, it's not. You handled this like a petty, self-righteous drama queen who thinks being technically correct means you're automatically not a piece of crap. Hate to break it to you, it doesn't. You're the jerk because you dragged your son into this mess, let a hostile situation escalate to the point where he had to block family members, and somehow think laughing in that woman's face was a power move instead of a sign that you've completely lost perspective. You're not the bigger person. You're just louder. Yes, she's delusional. Yes, she's entitled. Yes, she's a home wrecker with a victim complex. But let's be real, you walked into that coffee shop not to resolve crap, but to put on a show. You wanted the last word. You wanted the applause, and you're pissed because she had the audacity to try to leverage something stupid, and you knew you could publicly humiliate her for it. And congratulations. You did. But here's the part you don't get to ignore. You could have shut this down in 2 texts and a phone call. You wanted the confrontation. You wanted to win. You wanted to be right so bad, you dragged your son into a 3-way power struggle between you, your ex, and his insecure wife, and then bragged about it like you just walked off a courtroom TV set. You don't owe her money, but don't act like you handled this with grace. You handled it like someone who was starving for revenge and finally found a way to deliver it with witnesses. So yes, you're the jerk. Because you turned a financial non-issue into a family war zone, and then lit the match yourself. OP, I tried contacting my ex to get him to handle this. She blocked my number from his phone. She brought the family into this. She contacted my son and asked him for money. All I did was call her out. I admit, I snapped. I already told her I wasn't giving her money. I don't know how much more graceful I could have handled this.